Okay, so next up, we're going to talk about moving into actually executing the squat. What we need to do, how we need to squat really well. The first step is creating tightness. Most of you have probably heard the term tightness. If you've ever been to a powerlifting meet, you'll hear coaches yelling, "Get tight," all the fucking time. Most people don't actually know what it means. A good analogy for tightness in any lift, but in particular the squat, is lack of tightness means a loss of energy when you're trying to transfer energy from pressing into the floor and that energy going into the barbell. So a good way to picture it is if I had a pool noodle and I got that pool noodle and just put it on Mimi's back and I pushed on the other end of the pool noodle, she probably wouldn't feel too much force by the time it got to her. Then all that energy would just dissipate because the pool noodle's soft and wobbly and all that energy is going to fall out. If I did that with a piece of wood, all of that energy is going to drive straight through the wood and into Mimi's back. We want to be the plank of wood that's moving tension from the floor or force from the floor to the barbell. Really important to keep that in mind. So we'll call it, you'll hear it called rigidity, tightness, whatever. That's what we're trying to create to move as much weight as safely as possible in all of these lifts. First part of this whole process is going to be the brace breath. So a lot of people think when they hear a brace breath, you yell out like brace, people will pull their abs in, they'll suck in, they'll do all sorts of weird and wonderful things to try and find this feeling of bracing within their midsection. What we're really looking for is if we had a band just under our rib cage, essentially our diaphragm, we're trying to pull as much air in there as we possibly can and then trap that air. So compress it so it creates force. So if you think of a balloon, the harder we push down on the balloon, the more resistance we get from that, the more rigidity we get from that, essentially creating that tightness that we've just explained. So I'm going to get Mimi to demonstrate while she's under the bar. So if we imagine that we had a lifting belt on that's wrapped around this midsection of Mimi's diaphragm, she's going to think about pulling out into all of that belt. So it's not into the belly, it's not into the down into the low diaphragm, it's just expanding that entire thing with as much air as we possibly can. So we do a big pull of air in, and then we lock those ribs down on all that air to compress it and make it really, really rigid. So that's what we call a brace breath. Now, when it comes to practical execution, holding that breath is really hard. If you have high blood pressure or you're unfit, it's even harder. So we need to be selective as to how long and when we hold that brace breath for. So there's two variations that I like to give to clients, and it usually depends on what rep range they're working in. From a 1 to 5 rep range, we use what's called a full Valsalva, where we hold the breath for the entire rep. And then from 5 up to 10 reps, we're using what we call a half Valsalva. So we're going to do the half first. Mimi's going to start not relaxed. She's still got tightness that I'll show you guys shortly with feed and all that kind of stuff. But for the brace, she's actually going to hit the maximum brace as she gets to the bottom. So as she initiates the squat, she's pulling air in, fully braced at the bottom. She comes up out of the movement, and about halfway up, she exhales. That's going to allow Mimi to do 8 consistent reps without needing to reset or re-breathe at the top of every single one. You can imagine resetting for 8, that set's going to take forever. You're going to be more tired from breathing all the time than you are from a actual movement. For the full Valsalva, we hit that breath at the top, we lock that air in, and then we complete the rep and reset. Perfect. Now, a trick with these, if you are doing triples, 4s, 5s, you can actually link these together. So if you have the fitness and control, you might be able to do 2, even 3 reps on one breath. So we hit that big breath at the start, down into the squat, up, lock out solid, down into the squat, lock out solid, then we exhale, and we can do that again. So we're turning our set of 5 into a double and a single. Again, just makes your set more efficient. You won't be exhausted from just having the bar on your back. You'll just be able to focus on squatting the weight. So Mimi's going to rack that up. So that's the brace breath side of things. So we've got this torso now is really, really locked in. And that's, if you get that right, most of everything else will take care of itself because you're going to generally start to look for more tightness anyway. Now what we're going to do is just get me out in her normal high bar position again, and then we're going to create as much tension as we can from the floor up. So bring the bar out and look at other places that we can create tightness. So the first place we're going to look at is the feet. We're going to make sure that Mimi's big toe, little toe, heel are slammed into the floor, so she's actively pressing down into the floor, and then just twisting a little bit, just trying to drive a little bit of rotation into those feet just to create tension. You'll actually see when Mimi does it that she'll get activation through her quads and her glutes. Everything will look different just because she's created that tension. The next cue, a lot of people will say like knees out during a squat. It's not really a great cue because it doesn't actually create any tension. I can do this weird dance all day and nothing really happen. Instead, what we want to think about is externally rotating those thighs as hard as we can, or turning the quads away from each other, which is a more simple cue. So you grab your quads, turn them away, and you'll see instantly we get way more tension in the hip for Mimi with that. We're not going to do the brace breath yet. With the bar, we're going to grip the bar nice and tight, and we're going to think about breaking that bar around our back. What that'll do will naturally pull your chest up. So you'll hear lots of people talk about chest up. Instead of thinking at the chest, think at the bar and pull that bar down. You can see even just going through that motion, naturally your chest wants to lift up, and it'll create much more tension through your shoulders, into your lats. For fun fact, lats actually connect through fascia into your glutes, so it actually supports all of your trunk. And you can think of this as actually turning on your core through your lats, which a lot of people don't think about. Last step is adding the brace breath. So we've got feet, thighs, bar, big breath, then we go into the squat. Awesome. So outside of any movement dysfunctions or any issues that you have in terms of mobility at any of those joints we talked about, that'll fix 99% of the problems you have in your squats. Just creating really, really good tension from the floor all the way up and creating a really firm foundation for that bar to sit. If you are currently squatting without those, you'll find that the load will go up. You'll feel much more comfortable, be able to progress much, much faster. When you do introduce it, I'll give you one little, warning, is it'll feel harder. It might even feel a little bit slower just because there's so much blood pressure. Everything just feels so rigid and tight. And you're like, oh my God, what 60 kilos used to feel like nothing. Now it feels really hard. Make sure you film it and then watch the video back. Because how you feel under the bar versus what's actually happening, when you watch it, you'll be like, man, I look so much more stable. The force production is so much more. You'll get used to that discomfort after a little while. And then you'll just be able to add load safely and still moving through the correct range of motion and all that kind of stuff. So add all of those tips to your squats now, and they'll definitely start to progress.